Welcome back. Tomorrow, the House will be voting on a $60 billion Ukraine bill, a $26 billion Israel aid bill, and an $8 billion bill for the Indo-Pacific region. Lawmakers will also consider a fourth national security-related bill and a border bill as well. A new Daily Signal poll finds 47% of voters are against the Ukraine bill. Only 17% of Republican voters support it. 50% of voters are against the Israel aid bill. Only 32% of Republican voters support that one. Joining me now is South Carolina Congressman Russell Fry, a member of the House Oversight, Judiciary, and Weaponization of Government Committees. Congressman, what's with all these bills?
Well, I think it's, the unfortunate reality is that, Israel was just attacked. I mean, you look at the schedule, what we were supposed to do this week, it changed dramatically. And it's because of what Iran is doing directly. I mean, not through their proxies, but directly against the state of Israel. And so the purpose of this week is to confront that. The concern that I have is that you have all these other theaters that are involved in this, particularly, as you mentioned, Ukraine, which I've got real reservations about. But the setup this week is that we're going to be voting on each of these separately. Look, we have to stand with our strongest ally in the Middle East, Israel, but I've got tremendous concerns about the Ukrainian theater. And so each of these they're part of a larger package, but each of these will be separate votes for every member.
I mean, that's really what I'm referring to. It seems to me that you and your colleagues have been talking about securing the border now for a long time. You've yet to do so. That's a priority. I get that. Israel is a priority. I get that. But to jam all of these other bills, I mean, it's getting confusing, and, I mean, it appears scattered.
You're correct. And that's the problem. Look, I've been here in Congress for a year and a half. And you take a bill like this, and there are things that you and your constituents like, that they appreciate, that they want. Support for Israel, certainly one of those. But then you add in things that they don't like. And that's the problem with Washington, D.C. today, is that you lump all these things together. What I am at least somewhat appreciative about is that they're going to be separate votes. It's not an up or down on the entire package. You've got the opportunity to vote for or against Israel, for or against Ukraine. But it is frustrating that these things happen, and we're not paying attention to what voters really want. They do want a secure border, and I wish that the president could do this without a bill today, but I wish that he would actually secure the border. He took 52 executive actions against securing the border right when he took office. Let's put those back without a bill.
Yeah. Because of this, we know that there is a fight underway in the House. Certainly, Marjorie Taylor Greene has raised the issue of vacating the Speaker. Now, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, posted this on X. He says he will not hold a vote on raising the threshold for a motion to vacate. Currently, it takes only one lawmaker to introduce that motion. Marjorie Taylor Greene is threatening to do it. Johnson writes this: any rule change requires a majority of the full House, which we do not have. We will continue to govern under the existing rules. Freedom Caucus Chairman Bob Good, who voted to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, is now distancing himself from this push to remove Johnson, saying that a vote on a new Speaker should be held in November. Where are you on this issue?
I think it was incredibly reckless to get rid of Kevin McCarthy, and I would view the same thing about Speaker Johnson. Look, there's never been a committee chairman, majority leader, speaker that I've ever served under in the State House or in Congress that I've agreed with 100% of the time, but that's not the issue. The issue is governance. If we want to replace Speaker Johnson, that would be done in November. I think any move to do that now is incredibly reckless in a time that we need leadership in the House, even when you disagree with them.
Yeah. Let me go back to Ukraine for a moment, because I spoke with the president of Poland. He is my special guest on Sunday, and he is urging lawmakers to send aid to Ukraine. He does believe that Russia imperialism is taking shape once again, and that Vladimir Putin has his sights set on Poland and its neighbors. Here's President Duda with me yesterday. What is your reaction to something that President Trump has been talking about in terms of aid to Ukraine being a loan? The president has said many times that, yes, he agrees money should go to Ukraine, but it should be a loan to be paid back.
Well, of course, to a large extent, this is an issue of domestic policy, which is being implemented by the United States. I'm convinced that Ukraine will be able not only to thank for every kind of help, but also repay any kind of loan if there is such a loan granted. But this support is indispensable for Ukraine.
Congressman, the problem is that loan can be forgiven, can't it?
Yeah, under the current bill right now, that it would be a forgivable loan within a very short amount of time, that President Biden or President Trump could do that.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that now President Biden is considering sending more than $1 billion in new arms to Israel. Congressman, I know you just returned from Israel. You have sent a letter to Biden urging the White House to unilaterally support Israel, do everything in its power to help bring the hostages home safely. Biden, of course, has been calling for the ceasefire in Gaza, claiming that it will help bring home the hostages. But we haven't heard any word from the other side in terms of hostages release.
No, you know, the reality is that we need strong leadership right now on the world stage. We've got American citizens, dual citizens with Israel that are currently held hostage in Gaza. We presume that they're still alive, and it really is important to these families that we get these individuals back. And the concern that I have after being there and just seeing it and watching it is that you have an administration that is really like with an identity crisis with itself. Is, do they support Israel or don't they? All Hamas sees right now is daylight that separates Israel and the United States, and that's not good for these hostage families. We need to stand unilaterally with them. We need to make sure that we get these hostages back. And any daylight that exists between the state of Israel and the United States is a problem in getting them back. We have to have a clear leadership on the world stage right now, and unfortunately, I don't think that we have it.
Yeah, not to mention President Biden and the Democrats have been trashing Bibi Netanyahu in public, leaking phone calls that they've had with him, which is obviously very bad form. Todd Pyro, jump in here.
If this $1 billion that Biden wants to give now was given throughout, I don't know, the end of last year, would Iran have attacked earlier this week, or would they have been intimidated and said, you know, obviously, United States is 100% aligned with Israel. We don't want to mess with the United States, so we're going to sit this one out. What do you think, Congressman?
Well, where I'm really concerned with is that we allowed $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets to be given back to the state of Iran. We know that they fund Hezbollah to the tune of about $1 billion a year. And so, look, I'm happy that Israel's getting aid. They need to replenish their Iron Dome so they can protect themselves. But the concern is that we're allowing Iran to function as a country which directly weaponizes Hamas and Hezbollah against the state of Israel. They launch attacks all the time, and that's where that's the concern that I have right now.
Yeah, well, and it is a real concern. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you.